Hello, dreadful family. Some nights are quiet, some nights drag on forever. But then there are the nights you'll never forget. Tonight, I'm sharing 4 terrifying stories from security guards who face the kind of fear that creeps in when the lights go out and no one is around. Abandoned buildings, shadowy figures, and moments that could have ended it all. Stay close because these true stories will haunt you long after the video ends. I've been a security guard for over 5 years, mostly working corporate buildings and small office complexes. Most nights are uneventful, quiet, almost boring. The kind of work where the most excitement is a flickering light or a door that sticks. But one night a few months ago reminded me just how wrong that can go. My company had recently taken on a new contract, an abandoned shopping mall on the outskirts of town. I won't give the exact location, but it's as remote as they come. The mall is huge, 6 stories, completely empty except for a few boarded-up stores and the occasional maintenance crew checking plumbing or electricity. The parking lot is enormous and surrounded by a tall metal fence topped with barbed wire. There's only one entrance and exit, which leads to a side road 3 miles from the main highway. At night, it's the kind of place where even the wind feels menacing. Because of my seniority, I was allowed to pick my shifts. Normally, I stuck to evenings or mornings, leaving overnight shifts to newer guards. But the company had trouble filling weekend overnight shifts, so I took a few, mainly for extra pay before moving into a new apartment. The first 2 shifts were uneventful. Nothing happened. I'd patrol, check cameras, log reports, the usual. But the 3rd weekend, everything changed. It was a Saturday night around 2 a.m. during a thunderstorm so violent the wind sounded like it could tear the roof off the building. I was sitting in the control room on the top floor, 3 large monitors displaying live CCTV feeds of the mall and parking lot, while I watched a movie on my phone. My Game Boy sat next to me, a small comfort in the middle of the dark, empty building. I got up to stretch and walked over to the window. Lightning flashed, illuminating the rain and debris scattered by the wind. That's when I saw it. A figure darting between the trees just outside the fence. Small, fast, maybe 20 feet away. Another flash of lightning and it vanished. My mind told me I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks. I tried to convince myself of that. I grabbed an energy drink from the vending machine and returned to the control room. That's when I noticed one of the camera feeds was down, the one facing the back parking lot. The monitor displayed only static, swaying slightly as if it had been knocked from its post. I assumed heavy winds, but my stomach sank. Then an alert sounded. Someone was accessing a part of the building that required a security code. My heart dropped. The back door. Green light. Whoever it was had the code. Not an employee, not a guard. I reached for my phone to call the police, but there was no service. The landline, dead. My only option was to move to the stairwell and hope to get a signal. I headed down the hallway. The power cut out mid-step. Pitch black. I ran to the stairwell near the lobby, planning to reach my truck if I had to. I moved quietly, using darkness as cover, assuming the intruder was in the basement where the generator was. As I descended, I heard a door open below me. Heavy footsteps approached, slow at first, then faster. My gun was in my hand, but my training didn't cover adrenaline this intense. I improvised. I ran quietly back up the stairs, then opened a door hard to create a diversion. The sound drew the intruder's attention. I climbed a ladder leading to the roof hatch, waiting in the shadows, hoping they'd follow the noise. Seconds later, I jumped down 10 feet, landing with a thud, and sprinted for the main stairs. Behind me, footsteps thundered. Every floor I ran, I stayed just ahead. Reaching the lobby, I heard a crash followed by a cry of pain. I think he fell on the stairs. I didn't wait to confirm. I burst through the front door and jumped into my truck. As I hit the fob to start the engine, I saw him, a man in black, hooded, masked, charging toward my vehicle. Tires squealed. I floored it, tearing onto the side road. Signal on my phone finally returned. I called the police immediately. They arrived 15 minutes later. We searched the mall and surrounding lot, nothing. No intruder. The stairwell? That's where they found a loaded, unregistered handgun the man had dropped. No trace of him anywhere else. I never understood why someone would break into an abandoned mall. No valuables, no purpose. All I knew was I was lucky to escape. Even now, months later, every creak in a building, every shadow in a parking lot reminds me of that night. I used to work nights as a security guard in a medium-sized corporate office building in New Jersey. Most nights were uneventful, quiet, boring. You get used to the hum of fluorescent lights, the faint echo of your own footsteps, the occasional creak of the building settling. I thought I had seen it all, until one night proved me very wrong. It started around midnight after the last employees had left. The lobby was empty, the fluorescent lights casting long, harsh shadows across the polished floor. My job was simple: check cameras, make patrol rounds, log any incidents, and mostly just sit and watch for anything unusual. That night I was bored, really bored. I kept glancing at the security monitors, scrolling through elevators, hallways, and the underground parking garage, when something caught my eye. On the feed for the lower parking garage, I saw a figure moving between the cars. My pulse jumped. The lot should have been completely empty. Only people with 24-hour access could enter at that hour, and I knew no one was inside. My first thought was maybe a maintenance worker or a late-night IT guy, but cleaning crews had left hours earlier, and he wasn't carrying anything or wearing a uniform. He was wearing a long, dark coat, slightly oversized, and he wasn't heading anywhere in particular. He just moved slowly, weaving around the rows like he was inspecting the area, or maybe just waiting. Something about the way he moved gave me chills. My gut told me this wasn't normal. I radioed my supervisor and explained what I was seeing. He told me to stay put and keep watching the cameras. That sounded reasonable, but my instincts screamed otherwise. I grabbed my flashlight and headed down to the garage. The elevator ride was agonizingly slow. Each floor seemed to echo in the shaft, every tiny noise amplified. I kept picturing the figure waiting, hiding, watching. By the time I reached the garage, my hands were clammy and my heart was racing. I called out, "Security here." My voice sounded weak, swallowed up by the enormous empty space. There was no reply. I scanned the rows of cars with my flashlight. Nothing. Not a single shadow, not a single movement. Maybe the camera had been malfunctioning, I told myself. Maybe my tired brain was playing tricks on me. Shaking off the fear, I headed back upstairs to the lobby. When I looked at the garage feed again, my stomach dropped. The figure was standing in the same spot I had just checked, unmoving, waiting. He hadn't been there when I walked the lot. That meant he had somehow gotten back to the exact same spot unnoticed. My mind raced. How? Was he hiding somewhere I hadn't seen? Or worse, had he been watching me the entire time? I radioed my supervisor again, trying to sound calm. I watched him slowly wander toward the stairwell leading to the upper floors. His movement was deliberate, calculated. He paused now and then, glancing over his shoulder like he was checking for someone, then disappeared from the camera just before reaching the door. My stomach sank. I checked every other feed. Hallways, elevator lobbies, rooftop access, nothing, no trace of him. It was impossible. Either he had access to the building I didn't know about, or he was hiding in a way I couldn't see. I stayed at my desk, heart pounding, until the elevator dinged. The doors opened empty, but the polished floor glistened with wet footprints. Barefoot. Outside it was freezing. He must have taken his shoes off to wander inside unnoticed. My fear skyrocketed. Every unlocked office, every storage room was a potential hiding spot. I called the local off-site patrol for backup. My mind was screaming at me to lock myself in the lobby, but I couldn't just sit there. I needed to patrol, to confirm what was happening, even though I knew it was probably a mistake. I took the elevator to the 5th floor. Slowly, carefully, I walked down the hallway with my flashlight. Every creak of the floor, every echo of the building made me jump. Halfway down, one of the office doors was slightly ajar. It shouldn't have been. I pushed it open, flashlight peering inside. Empty. A sleeping computer monitor and a chair pushed under the desk. Nothing else, then I froze, footsteps behind me. Heavy, wet, uneven, moving fast toward me. I spun my flashlight around. The dark coat. He was walking quickly, purposefully, and I realized he had been following me the entire time. Hiding just out of view, watching, waiting, I bolted toward the stairwell, handrail smacking against my arm as I ran, adrenaline pushing me forward. Footsteps followed. I had no idea how he had gotten inside or what he wanted. I dove into the stairwell, sliding down a few steps, slamming the door behind me. Then silence. My own breathing and the echo of the steps made me feel insane. Minutes passed. I tried to convince myself it had been a trick of my mind. Then the patrol arrived. I was pale, shaking, sweat running down my face. Together we searched the building floor by floor, room by room. The garage? Completely empty. No footprints, no evidence of anyone being there. The footage from the cameras? Corrupted. The time he appeared had been overwritten or erased. I quit that job within a month. The fear, the paranoia, the knowledge that someone had been inside following me, hiding just out of view, it stayed with me. Even now, years later, I get anxious in parking garages or office buildings at night. I check over my shoulder more than I should, imagining a long coat rounding the corner behind me, wet footsteps echoing in the hall. It wasn't supernatural. Not a ghost, not a phantom, just a person. But the thought of someone being inside that building, following me, unseen, still haunts me every time I think about it. It happened just a few days ago on my first night of training as a mobile security guard. For context, a mobile guard primarily drives around in a vehicle, visiting sites that require security checks. I had been nervous all day, but nothing could have prepared me for what that night would be like. My supervisor, a calm but serious guy, was showing me the ropes, how to conduct patrols, write reports, disarm alarms, and handle any unexpected situation. The first site on our schedule was a pharmacy and medical clinic in Mississauga, just outside Toronto. We arrived around 1:15 a.m., the streets empty and quiet, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel amplified. As we approached the building, something immediately felt wrong. The underground parking garage was open, even though it should have been secured, and the front door was busted open. My stomach dropped. My supervisor muttered under his breath, "What the? How is this possible? If someone broke in, the alarm should be going off." I didn't know how to react. This was my first night, and I'd been told to observe and learn. But instinctively, I felt fear creeping in. The building looked abandoned, but not like it had been forgotten. Something about it felt deliberate, like it was waiting. We stepped inside cautiously. My supervisor whispered, "Look at the elevator." I did. Sure enough, it was moving between floors, stopping at random levels. My heart sank. Someone was inside. He pulled out his baton, and I realized I was gripping my flashlight so tightly my knuckles were white. Adrenaline surged. I hated this already and wanted nothing more than to leave, but I knew that wasn't an option. This was the job, my training, and my responsibility. We went straight to the top floor, checking each level as we went. The elevator was silent now, but the building was dark and unwelcoming. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, every echo of our steps amplified. I tried to steady my breathing, telling myself it was probably just some late-night wanderer or a stray animal that had found its way in. On the 4th floor, we began investigating each room. My supervisor stayed close, constantly scanning and listening. He was usually calm, but that night even he seemed tense. "Stick with me," he said. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Then we heard it, footsteps from the stairwell. Slow, deliberate, approaching us. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the intruder could hear it. We pressed ourselves against the wall, listening. The sound stopped as suddenly as it had started. My supervisor radioed dispatch, his voice shaky but firm. "A4 call C25, we need immediate backup. Be advised, someone's in the building, hiding downstairs. They may be armed and waiting to ambush us." I felt my stomach twist. My first night on the job, and we were dealing with someone who had clearly been inside the building. Someone who could be anywhere. And they were silent, patient, dangerous. We waited. 15 minutes felt like hours. Every creak of the building, every distant sound made me flinch. I wanted to run, but I knew that wouldn't help anyone. And even if I could, the suspect was below us, somewhere in the shadows, possibly waiting to intercept us. Finally, the senior supervisor arrived. Together, we began a methodical sweep of the building. Each floor, each room, each bathroom, we checked everything. The building was massive, yet utterly silent. And still there was no sign of anyone. Then we heard the front door open. Footsteps ran outside. By the time we reached the ground floor, the intruder was gone. Vanished, as if he had never been there. The fear lingered long after we left. Even as we drove back to the office, my hands trembled and my mind raced. How had he gotten in? What was his plan? Would he come back? I kept thinking about the silence, the shadows, the way the building seemed alive with anticipation. Every corner, every room could hide him. And for the first time in my life, I understood what real fear felt like. Not supernatural horror, but the terrifying presence of someone with unknown intentions, someone capable of hiding in plain sight. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every sound, every creak in my apartment felt like it was echoing the footsteps I had heard in that building. Even now, days later, I find myself checking over my shoulder, imagining shadows moving just out of view. listening for the faintest sound of someone following me. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't paranormal. It was real. And that realization, that someone could move through a building unseen, waiting, watching, and disappearing without a trace, is what makes it worse than anything else. The fear lingers because the person is still out there somewhere, and I know deep down that if I return to that site alone, I might see him again. That first night changed the way I see the job forever. Security is no longer about watching cameras or writing reports. It's about understanding that danger can hide in the most ordinary places. That fear is not just a feeling but a presence. And that sometimes, the scariest things are the ones that leave no trace at all. Even now, when I drive past buildings at night, I find myself imagining shadowy figures lurking inside, waiting for someone to notice them. And every time I do, I remember that night, the first night, and I know that some lessons in fear never leave you. I've been working as a security guard for over 7 years now. I've seen my fair share of weird incidents, but nothing prepared me for my shift at the old abandoned shopping mall on the outskirts of town. The mall had been shut down for years, but the company I worked for got a contract to guard it, while the owners figured out what to do with it. I was told it was mostly paperwork, patrolling empty halls, checking doors, and monitoring the few security cameras still working. Easy money, I thought. The first night I arrived at the mall just after sunset. The parking lot was cracked, overgrown with weeds, and the streetlights barely worked. My truck's headlights illuminated the massive dark silhouette of the mall. The glass doors at the front entrance were grimy, some shattered. I grabbed my flashlight, baton, and radio and headed inside. Immediately, the place felt wrong. There was an echo, a stillness, like the building was holding its breath. I did my first sweep of the main concourse. Empty stores with busted windows stared back at me. I checked the doors and locked them as I went. Everything seemed normal, or as normal as a deserted mall can feel. I got to the food court around 8 p.m. The fluorescent lights flickered above the tables, casting long, jittering shadows. I sat on one of the benches and opened my thermos. I was about to pour some coffee when I heard it, a soft scraping sound from the second floor above me. I froze, listening. My heart rate picked up. I reminded myself that the mall was abandoned. There shouldn't be anyone up there. Maybe a raccoon or something small had gotten inside. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it toward the escalator leading to the second floor. Nothing. Just the empty, dark escalator. I continued my patrol, moving slowly, checking each store. About 30 minutes in, I reached the department store at the far end of the mall. Its doors were chained shut, but I noticed the glass panels were scratched as if someone had tried to get in recently. I jotted it down in my report, thinking it might be vandals. Around 10 p.m., I went up to the second floor. The stairs creaked under my weight. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing empty corridors, abandoned kiosks, and the shadows of fallen ceiling tiles. That's when I first heard the voice. It was soft, almost a whisper. "Hello?" I froze. My heart skipped a beat. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty halls. No reply. I swung my flashlight across the corridor. Nothing. I rationalized it. Probably just the wind or my imagination. But then I heard it again, closer this time. A faint shuffle, like someone walking softly on the linoleum floor. I shined my light down the hallway. Still nothing. I kept walking, trying to stay calm. I told myself it was just an animal. But as I turned a corner, I saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I froze. The figure didn't move. It was tall, thin, and its head was tilted strangely, almost unnaturally. I raised my flashlight and swung it toward the figure. It disappeared. Just like that, I took a step forward. Nothing. I called into my radio, trying to calm myself. Anyone on the second floor? Silence, static. I decided to finish my patrol and get back to the main entrance. As I walked, I started hearing footsteps behind me. Slow at first, then faster. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see it. I just wanted to get out. I reached the escalator. It was stopped. I tried the stairs instead. The sound followed me, light, uneven steps echoing through the empty hallways. I sprinted down the stairs. When I reached the first floor, the noise stopped. The mall was silent again. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just on edge. I checked the cameras from the security office. Everything was normal, except one camera. The feed from the food court was distorted, showing nothing but static. I frowned. That camera had worked earlier. I reset it. Still nothing. Around midnight, I went for my last patrol. I took the main concourse again, flashlight in hand. That's when I saw them, handprints on the glass of a jewelry store. Fresh handprints. I hadn't been near that store tonight. My stomach turned. I radioed my supervisor. "Hey, the jewelry store. Someone's been here," he laughed. "It's probably vandals, man. Just lock up and finish your shift." I didn't laugh. I knew it wasn't vandals. I was alone. I locked the doors anyway and continued. As I walked toward the exit, I heard it again. A soft, dragging sound from the upper floor. My blood ran cold. I turned on the stairwell lights and headed up slowly. Halfway up, the lights flickered and went out. I was in total darkness. My flashlight beam bounced across the walls as I moved. Then I felt it. A cold breeze on the back of my neck and a whisper right in my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. Nothing. Just darkness. My heart pounded, my hands shook. I backed into the stairwell, trying to call for backup, no signal. My radio was dead. I kept moving up the stairs, desperate to get to the roof. Maybe I could escape. But when I reached the second floor, I froze. The shadow was there again at the end of the hallway. Watching me, I raised my baton and flashlight. "Stay back," I shouted. It moved fast, impossibly fast, and disappeared around the corner. I ran after it. My flashlight caught a glimpse of its form, tall and distorted. Almost human, but not quite. It was gone before I could get a clear look. I ran back to the security office, locked the door, and sat there shaking. I checked the cameras again. The food court camera feed was still static. "And the hallway where I saw the shadow?" The camera showed it. Empty. I spent the rest of the night in the office, flashlight on, baton ready, listening to every creak and shuffle. I didn't leave until my shift ended at 6 a.m. When the morning patrol arrived, I told them what happened. They laughed at first, but when they checked the cameras, the food court feed had been mysteriously wiped overnight. No explanation. No intruders found. I never went back to that mall alone. Every time I think about that night, the whisper, the shadow, the cold breeze, I shiver. I don't know if it was a person or something else entirely, but I know one thing. That abandoned mall was alive in a way no living being should be, and I was lucky to get out of there in one piece.